a hi, how are you makes me feel like, okay, matlab, get to the point. You reached out on LinkedIn, you've connected. Your first message should be very crystal clear on what do you want and what can I do for you and what can you do for me, or, jo bhi hai, wo karo. Let's say I'm writing to, Hotstar to do a sampling in the office, right? My subject is Sleepyowl X Hotstar. He said, Arman, it has to be Hotstar X Sleepyowl. Give them the priority and importance. ये तो मैंने सोचा ही नहीं था. अगर आप किसी को you're writing a job application, bare minimum you should do is Google best templates that I should use and things that I should keep in mind while writing this. आप वही कर लोगे ना, chances are your email will get read. अपने आप को analyze करो, सीखो, समझो कि आपके क्या gaps हैं, क्या shortcomings हैं, कैसे improve करना है, and then work on those things because that improvement will never be overnight. If you're working towards perfection and taking a lot of time, that could also lead to inefficiency.
Welcome back inside another episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Arman Sood, who is the co-founder of Sleepyowl, a coffee company that is innovating the coffee industry with some really interesting products. In this episode, I invited Arman to specifically discuss about a few things. Number one, how do you start a business in the industry where you have no idea of? When Arman and two of his friends started Sleepyowl back in 2016, they had no idea about coffee or even the food and beverage industry. How they navigated the whole journey and how did they adopt the learner's mindset. Second, we're going to talk about the beliefs that Arman had for the longest period of time, and we actually go really deep. And at the end of this episode, Arman told me that, Bijay, you know what? I went really deep and I didn't think that I would go that deep in this conversation, which I think is really, really beautiful in the sense that this is the conversation where Arman shared some of the things that he hasn't shared as a founder, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And third, how do you actually reach out to people and seek help from them? We talk about self-rejection, where you reject yourself before someone else can reject you. And Arman actually gives you a framework on reaching out to people and how do you ask help. And we also talk about co-founders and how do you build a strong relationship and trust, not only with co-founders, but with your customers, with your vendors, and so on and so forth. This episode is full of wisdom and insights, and it's not the typical Sleepyowl journey or the brand's journey conversation that you might have heard Arman talk about in the other podcasts. This is where we go really deep, where you will actually feel that Arman's mindset is being decoded, and that's what I love doing on the Inspiring Talk podcast. Enjoy this conversation. Welcome back to another episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast. I'm super excited to be joined by Arman Sood. Arman, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
We already had our coffee.
Yes.
And we are all set. We're having our coffee, not already had. We're having our coffee and all set for this conversation. You call yourself a go-getter.
Correct. I do.
Yeah. So what is the mindset that you operate with? Like when you wake up in the morning, what goes in the mind of a go-getter like yours?
I think, I think a go-getter's mindset is definitely when you wake up, you have to have your day planned ahead, right? Otherwise, you can't be a go-getter. So you need to know what you are chasing, what you are after, and how you have allocated your time in the day to go and achieve that, right? Because I think if you're not well planned, then you will not be able to achieve what you have set out to achieve in a given day, right? So I think planning the night before, sometimes even the week before, right, is really helpful for you to know, okay, this is what I intend to do over the course of this week. This is what I intend to do today. How have you planned your day to achieve it? And once you have that structure in place, right, and then you one by one get things off the list and get things done, I think having that attitude is the attitude of a go-getter, right? If you're unplanned, unprepared, unstructured, chances are that you will not achieve what you have set out to achieve. And I think that's what I define as the go-getter attitude, right? कि अगर आपको कुछ करना है तो उसके लिए plan करके करना है, and then, attack those things. And of course, completely dependent on priorities, right? कि, okay, what is important, what is going to move the needle? That's how you have to think about your day and your work. And I think that's the go-getter attitude.
Are you extremely organized?
I try to be. I think, I definitely have some amount of OCD when it comes to things. So I try to be. I think it's not right for anyone to say I'm perfect, right? Then
Yeah,
there's
of
no
course.
scope for growth,
Yeah.
right? So could I be more organized? Could I be better organized? Yes. But yeah, I try to be organized. I think it's a good feeling to be organized, to have things in order. It keeps your mind at peace, right? Varna, there are people who can work
In chaos.
in chaos, and I think there's no right or wrong approach to work styles at all, right? But for me, being organized helps my mental peace. That is definitely something that helps me personally.
Yeah. I have realized my way of working is if I list things down, then it bothers me till the time I haven't like checked those things off, right?
Understood.
If I haven't written those down, then it just get lost.
That's
And
true.
I just don't know what was it that I intended to do, right? So what are a few things that you use to organize things then?
I use lists, but I prefer using notes on my laptop and my phone, and therefore it's always in sync,
Yeah.
right? So wherever you are, you have it in sync. I think the pen and paper habit is, works for a lot of people. It doesn't work for me. I actually end up misplacing notebooks, starting notebooks, and then they disappear, and then you start a new notebook. So the pen and paper hasn't worked for me as much, but I think. Using notes as a feature on my laptop and my phone really works for me. I have tried using tools like Notion, etc. in the past, but personally, I feel that's more complex for me and the kind of work that I do.
Yeah.
So I've kept it very simple, very basic.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And, I feel that I'm a little impatient when it comes to, things that needs to be done. And, people at the office is like, Bijay, why do you have to always be in hurry? Like, can we not take the time to do things? And so it's a boon. And also at the same time, sometimes like you feel that I wish I took a little extra time in that. So you call yourself an impatient as well, right?
Yes, but I think it's again, थोड़ा balance होना चाहिए,
Yeah.
right? You can't, sometimes if you're in a hurry, it could be half-hearted also.
Yeah.
So I think I'm also learning to figure out the right balance between, speed and let's say,
Perfection.
perfection. But in either speed or perfection, in both those journeys, I think one very important metric to track is efficiency. You could do
Yeah.
something fast and not well, then you'll have to do it again, and that's inefficient, right? If you're working towards perfection and taking a lot of time, that could also lead to inefficiency. So in either of the models, you have to measure how efficient am I and my team being in achieving a given task. I think that's something that I'm focusing on. I think early days it used to be impatience. Now I'm a little bit more patient, but like I said, the balance is crucial to maintain.
So in finding that balance of patience and also trying to do things right is crucially important. And also you do have two other founders, right?
Correct,
And I think
yes.
having those complementary sort of skill sets in your founders also help, right? So what are some of the complementary skills that you have, and where like three of you sort of find that
Understood.
balance?
So I think when we started Sleepy Owl, right? So where Ajay comes from a finance background. He's an economics graduate, and he worked at JP Morgan prior to joining, and the two of us. And Ashwajit and I are law graduates, so we studied law, right? So it was very clear from the get-go that anything finance, business modeling, business building would be Ajay's domain and expertise, including investor relations. Between Ashwajit and I think, working on design, working on e-commerce, working on the online
Product.
space, because he has that, the aesthetic, B, the attention to detail that is required in design, right? You have this beautiful setup here with cameras and with wires and with, there'll be editing, post editing, uploading it, getting things done. So all of that for me is not my interest area, right? I don't enjoy it as much, which is why I said earlier, even a tool like Notion, for example, I get bogged down by it, right? So that's how he took on marketing as his skill set and area to learn, right? कि नहीं आता but मैं सीखना चाहता हूँ तो मैं ये सीखना चाहता हूँ, मुझे
Yeah.
नहीं इंटरेस्ट था उसमें, right? So I took a lead on everything back end, operations, supply chain, procurement. That was where I started my
Product
journey.
and stuff, yeah.
Product, bringing something to life, right? Like, so Ashwajit is the visionary.
Yeah.
He's the one with the ideas, right? I'm supposed to bring those ideas to life, as quickly or as perfectly as possible, depending on the scenario. And Ajay is, manages both of us. Ki yaar, this is the budget, this is the guardrail, this is, what we can price it, these are the margins, this is the spend, this is the marketing, this is the thing, what kind of team we need to build to take your ideas and your execution to success, is where he balances both of us really, really well,
Wow.
right? So I think three of us have very different things that we bring to the table in the organization. Over the course of our journey, there has been evolution, right? Of course, Ajay still, deeply looks at HR, team building, plays the role of the CEO essentially with, managing the cash, talking to
Yeah.
investors, building out our models. And he's taken a very lead role in also, what are the avenues that will drive growth for the business, right? As we've scaled our organization, we've have professionals in ops and supply chain as well. It's much needed as the organization scales. So I've taken a more proactive role on new product development and customer experience, right? Of course, with a certain amount of sales involved, right? Because you can represent in meetings and in negotiations and in what kind of accounts we want to close. That's where I put my time. And Ashwajit still has full control and over marketing, over design, over how we should look, feel, and how we should communicate as a brand. We don't treat our business as a just a corporate entity. I think we're very clear that our business is also a person. Our business has a voice. Our brand has a voice. Our brand is somebody and has a personality, and that has to come through, right? Because that is what will differentiate us and make us relatable with our consumer, right? Earlier I was talking to you about this revolutionary product that we created and we launched. आज नहीं तो कल 10 और लोग यही करेंगे, right?
True.
And question is, in that situation, how are you relevant? So Ashwajit is the guardian to ensure that the brand is authentic, transparent, and honest, right? And it is my responsibility along with supply to ensure that our quality of the product and customer experience is top notch, right? So the three of us are very aligned in the principles that we want to build this business with, right? And I think because we're aligned on that at a base level, conflicts are far and few in terms of who does what on a day-to-day basis and who is responsible for what, right? And of course, there's an immense amount of trust that we have on each other and our motivation to be in this in the long term.
Yeah, really interesting. And one of the things that really stood out, in your journey, in all three of you,
Hanji.
none of you come from like coffee background.
Correct.
And you had no clue of this. Like, like you said, Ajay was investment banker
Correct.
working out of the US, and you two were working in law firms, studied law, and then
Bilkul.
doing the wrong thing and stuff like that. But after that, like, you guys really took on this journey of learning, right? Going to places to source coffee and understand how this really works and stuff like that, and which shows even after you have done that, then when you were developing the cold brew coffee, you actually reached out to a lot of cold brew coffee makers across the globe and said that, like, hey, how do you guys do this? Can you please help? Can you please teach us, right? And wearing that cap of like, hey, you know what, I need to learn, and having that learner's mindset, how crucial is it for an entrepreneur?
I think it's there's no way around it, right? I think especially if you are an outsider to any industry. So I would say when we weren't just outsiders to the coffee industry, we were also outsiders to the FMCG industry, right? I think when you touched upon creating the cold brew product or creating this product, right, or creating products with coffee, right? Of course, there was a huge learning curve on understanding coffee, right, as an agricultural commodity, how it's traded, how it's grown. But that is only one piece of the puzzle, right? मतलब हमने product बना दिया, but अब इसका करे क्या? कहाँ बेचे, कैसे बेचे? How do you scale the business? How do you run modern trade, general trade, e-commerce? Whether it's D2C or marketplaces, how does all of this work, right? How do you build a team to scale that? There was a lot of learning on that front also, right? So I think from day one, we realized that the only way forward is to ask questions and seek answers, right? There is no way, we can say we know everything, right? So, I have a simple, I would say, I don't know if the right word is karma, but it's like you do good, you get good, right? So अगर हमें सीखने के लिए लोगों से सवाल पूछने पड़ते हैं, same way if there are people who come to ask for questions, we are very helpful in sharing our learnings and knowledge, right? So I think then that cycle repeats itself, right? Like you seek answers from people who are ahead of the curve with you, right? And people help us. And when people come to us, we also ensure कि जो हमने सीखा है, we can share our learnings, right? So I think then the cycle continues. And I think the ecosystem around us of FMCG entrepreneurs, of D2C entrepreneurs has evolved, and it's a close-knit community, right? And I think the community really comes and supports each other in a big way. And we're blessed to be there, right? So yeah, I think learning mindset is really important. And in fact, as and when we do new things, as and when we are, approaching new business problems, we make sure that we, talk to people around us, because वहीं पे आपको, 10 चीज़ें पता चल जाएंगी and you can avoid mistakes, right? I don't think necessarily when we started, there was a lot of, things that we did on the product development side of reaching out to cold brew makers, reaching out to coffee aficionados, experts, understanding the product development. But then when we started selling our products, right, at that time, I think, we were early in the business and industry. I think we try to do it ourselves, कि हम खुद करेंगे and we'll do it. But then I think after a couple of months here, he said, "Nahin, yaar, I think let's go seek even on how to run the business, right? Anyone who's ahead of you." And I think that's where we were very fortunate to have DSG consumer partners come on board as investors. Of course, they as investors were kind and helpful, but their portfolio of companies, which include the likes of at that time Raw Pressery, Epigamia, Sula, Viba, FMCG, upstarts that were already slightly ahead on the curve, right? Suddenly we had the fortune of being able to pick up the phone and call anyone and say, "Listen, हमें समझाओ, हमें सिखाओ, कैसे करते हो?"
For that, don't you think it requires a lot of like your ego being on the side?
100%.
Right? You can't have like
100%. You can't have any ego. You can't have any pride. You can't have anything कि मैं ज़्यादा जानता हूँ या मुझे पता है. Having said that, when it comes to advice, right, everything has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because I think everyone's figuring it out. So किसी के पास आपके लिए सही जवाब नहीं है कि यही करो या ऐसे ही होगा, नहीं. But you can always hear and then apply and see what works in your current situation, in your business, in your products, in your industry, and then see what to take and what not to take, right? But वो जाके पूछना ज़रूरी है, right? अगर आप वो नहीं करोगे, then I think it's more of an uphill battle without that, right? So शुरू में हमने नहीं किया, but gradually we also learned that no, it's important to have these conversations, and now we have that as a muscle, right? It's like a muscle. We've activated it, and now it's strengthening.
So what is the worst piece of advice that you've received?
Yeah, I don't think I can pinpoint one worst piece of advice. I think जो advice देते हैं वो अच्छा ही देते हैं लोग, मतलब बहुत कम ऐसे लोग हैं. फिर then you need to really reevaluate who you're talking to, right? So I think one thing that we've done right is when we've gone out and spoken to people, we've spoken to the right people, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's another important thing कि advice लेना है, मैं कह रहा हूँ हाँ लेना है, but किससे लेना है?
Yeah.
वो भी आपको सोच समझ के करना है. So I think one thing we've done right is gone to the right people for advice, right?
If I want to start a beverage company, whatever beverage company, maybe I'll come to you. Like you've done in coffee, maybe then I can replicate the same in like whatever beverage company that I'm starting, right? So
when we started, I'll tell you an anecdote. So my co-founder Ashujit, among the three of us, has the most learning mindset. बात करना है लोगों से. So he actually wrote to he wrote an email, cold email to neeraj@hectorbeverages.com. That is Neeraj Kakkar from Paperboat, right? And ये हम 2016 की बात थी, we had just started, हमारे पास एक भी product नहीं था, but he wrote an email and funnily he got a mail back and a 30-minute call scheduled.
Wow.
With him at that time on advice and some questions that we had. I don't think we asked the right questions even on that day. It was so early in our journey. But the fact that you take that punt ना कि मैं देखते हैं worst comes to worst क्या होगा, reply नहीं आएगा, ठीक है, right? So things like that, you need to know who you are seeking advice from. Any particular worst advice, not off the top of my head currently. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like you said, right, you need to know the right question to ask.
Yes.
Right, and so how do you look at like, hey, what should I be asking? Like,
I think you should be very
filter,
very clear on. I think depends on who you're talking to, right? And what your current problem statement is, right? आप किसी को मिलके you can have hundreds of vague conversations, but I think it boils down to what is the most pressing challenge or problem you face today, and can that person or has that person been
Solve
through that
that.
journey and seen that? Can they give you what they did in that situation and how they approached it? I think that is the key takeaway from the meeting. Baki to yaar, of course, you have lots of conversations about lots of things, but एक key takeaway होना चाहिए.
Yeah.
From any interaction when you're going to take advice. I want this one thing you need to educate me on. उस पे हम bulk of that 80% time spend करेंगे. Baki 20% it's good to actually keep it vague because then you may encounter something new, something that you weren't even thinking of, right? But your core problem statement का जवाब आपको लेके आना है, and then you need to analyze it and then implement and take some action on it.
Yeah. And Arman, one of the things that I have realized is when you are clear on what exactly do you need from the person, people are very helpful when it comes to responding to it, right? But a lot of people self-reject themselves, number one. And number two, even if they get to like, if I want to ask something to Arman, then I would think that, oh, you know what, I need to ask something to Arman first. Let me ask him how he is, and maybe I'll just send a hi. But Arman will never respond to that. Like, for that matter, nobody will respond. Like, just send hi, right?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this, and this is happening off late quite a bit, where LinkedIn is being treated like WhatsApp, right? Where where somebody reaches out, first conversation, hi, how are you? And I'm like, I don't really feel like though I respond to almost everyone I can. But a hi, how are you makes me feel like, okay, matlab, get to the point.
Yeah.
You reached out on LinkedIn, you've connected. Your first message should be very crystal clear on
what do you want?
What do you want and what can I do for you and what can you do for me, or jo bhi hai, wo karo. Hi, how are you is what you do on WhatsApp, right? With someone you know. That's where I feel like, I don't think I'm sitting on LinkedIn to say, hey, I'm doing well, how are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. That's not what LinkedIn is for. So,
even WhatsApp for that matter, like even if I get your number from somewhere,
100%. But chalo, WhatsApp is still a medium where aap ek dusre ko back and forth text karte ho. But LinkedIn definitely not. It's not a hi, how are you? It's not. In fact, a lot of just hi. That's it. Are you waiting for me to say hi? Then you'll say something. Matlab, yaar, like.
Think about like the other person's time.
Utilize that well, right? Because chalo, for me it's like a I think OCD. It's one of those OCDs कि मुझे करना पड़ता है reply. I have to reply, right? But for a lot of people, who may be busier, or in different stages, तो कोई reply नहीं करेगा, right? So I think that those are small little things. I think people need to really. I think for a lot of people, it may be smart to take courses on how to write an introductory email. There should be stuff out there to help people, especially potential, especially if there are people seeking work, right? Potential employees are writing to their employers. I think, it is very important for them to go through an exercise on, what to do and how to do it, right? Many a times there's a hi PFA my CV, right? Where is your cover letter, where is your body, where is your punch, why you? Those are very important, I think, soft skills that need work, right? And I'm also saying from a sales perspective, right? For me, the thing comes in sales when I'm pitching to people.
How do you do it?
What am I doing? How am I doing it? I'm also learning, right? Like, so I remember pitching to someone and it was he was also in sales at some point. They're very kind enough to share feedback where I was wrong in my pitch email. मैंने क्या गलतियाँ की हैं, क्या लिखना चाहिए था, कैसे लिखना चाहिए था, right? Something as small as, let's say I'm writing to, Hotstar to do a sampling in the office, right? My subject is Sleepy Owl X Hotstar. He said, Arman, it has to be Hotstar X Sleepy Owl. Give them the priority and importance. ये तो मैंने सोचा ही नहीं था,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
something as small as that, I got that feedback. So sometimes I try giving feedback as well, but many a times that's not possible. So I would say, if someone is desperately seeking a job, simple Google search will tell you, and this is where I'll tie it back to our earlier conversation, learning mindset and curiosity, right? Agar aap kisi ko, you're writing a job application, bare minimum you should do is Google best templates that I should use and things that I should keep in mind while writing this. Aap wahi kar loge na, chances are your email will get read.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this is, crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are two things that's coming,
Yeah.
from this. So first thing that I want to talk about is the whole aspect of self-rejection, which I think like 90% of us, even before like sending that hi, even if it's just like hi, 90% of us just like self-reject ourselves. Yet ye banda mere ko kyun reply karega? So do you think like, that's a big problem that a lot of us self-reject ourselves even?
So and I think if there are people who are self-rejecting themselves, it is, it's simply they need to build that muscle of confidence, right? I think like you were mentioning to me earlier, right? Like it's a journey, right? Like when you started podcasting, you would say, okay, this is how you did it, and now you've grown in that. I think people need to spend more time on growing themselves, right? And this applies to me also. What are you doing on a day-to-day basis or on certain areas of your life that need improvement? You have to analyze yourself. Instead of self-rejection, it should be self-analysis. कि आप अपने आप को एनालाइज करो, सीखो, समझो कि आपके क्या गैप्स हैं, क्या शॉर्टकमिंग्स हैं, कैसे इंप्रूव करना है, एंड देन वर्क ऑन दोज थिंग्स, बिकॉज दैट इम्प्रूवमेंट विल नेवर बी ओवरनाइट, राइट? So I think that's what I would say, that if there is self-rejection, I don't know if there is. It's definitely something that would be confidence related in areas that you think you are weak at.
Yeah.
So उस पे फिर काम करना शुरू करो. That is important. Yeah.
And I think it starts with understanding that, hey, you know what? Before I reject myself,
बिल्कुल.
like, let me just put it out there. And I remember in one of your conversations when, going back to the context of where you were trying to build the cold brew coffee.
हाँ जी.
And you said, like, we are not able to figure this out. Let me, like, write to 10 people in
Absolutely.
the world.
Absolutely. And we did, we reached out to, I think cold brew manufacturers and brands in the UK, in the US, and little did we think कि कोई, reply करेगा. But some of them did respond with their learnings, their mistakes, and you got your answers, right?
Yeah.
So I think Google is a very powerful tool. People sometimes underestimate what you can discover. In fact, I would say that some of our early hypothesis about how to make a good cold brew came out of Reddit threads.
Wow.
And this is again, I don't use Reddit. I find it quite complex. But Ashujit, my co-founder, understood deeper about how Reddit works and how to access it. And he is when you need answers, need insights, he will find communities and sub-communities and sub-threads and go deep into it, and he came back with a lot of answers, right? And he enjoys using that tool, because you can pretty much find anything you want there, so yeah.
Now I want to talk about relationships, right? So in this journey of building Sleepy Owl, your relationship probably started first, the relationship you started with the founders, and then the relationship with the suppliers or the farmers back where you source your coffee, and then, and then the relationship with your employees and stuff like that. So let's take each of these one step at a time, and let's start with like, how do you see a relationship in general? Because also you have shared that we were able to get our product on retail stores because we were able to build good relationship with them, good, like convince them that, hey, you know what, why you should really put this and whatever, right? So do you think we generally in India, like, we are not so good in terms of business relationship and stuff like that, not good in terms of creating those relationships? Or do you think like we do have ego?
See, I can't speak for others.
Yeah.
I think that's something I can't do, right? I can't put a blanket statement on, in India people don't have relationships. I think I'm not the right position or person to make any of those blanket statements. I can only speak for what we've done and how we've approached it, right? I think from day one we realized that brands are built on credibility, right? And credibility is takes time because trust building takes time, right? So like I said earlier on the karma point, right? You have to be fair, right? If you are not fair, if you're not authentic, you're not honest, it will, in all likelihood, come and bite you back at some point in time, right? So I think once people know that they are being treated fairly, they begin to trust you. Once they begin to trust you, they begin to like you, right? And once they like you and you are delivering on your promises, right, they begin to love you, right? And this would apply whether it's your employees, whether it's your vendors, whether it's your partners, whether it's retailers, store owners. I think across the value chain, and ultimately this reflects the strength of the brand, right? And whether I'm there or not, or whether my founders are there or not, I think if this culture permeates, and you're like today we are working with thousands of stores in the country, many of whom I have not even opened accounts or interacted with, right? My team has. But there has to be, that if someone is in some retailer or some person has some concern or issue, right, that has to be addressed in a fair and square manner, because I think people will come and go, including us. But the idea is that the brand and the organization should stand the test of time, right? And the only way for that to happen is if we all speak one voice, one language, right? And that is the language of trust with your partners. And then good times and bad times, I think it is these partners that turn around and support you, right? And COVID was a testament to that, right? A lot of our vendors and our partners extended their support to us to be able to survive, right? So whether it's a packaging supplier, whether it's a vendor, they were able to give us the requisite support that we needed at that time, right? And we reciprocated when we could. So I think that's very crucial.
So what is the one thing that you strongly believe in at the personal level, like about life in generally, which you hold dearly?
I think authenticity. I think that is something that I hold dearly, and my co-founders hold very dearly as well. Is like call a spade, right? Be able to have tough conversations, hard conversations with each other. Represent yourself in the absolute truest form to your partners, whether it's your vendors, your suppliers, right? Don't be afraid to show vulnerability, right? I think that's all of these things are what make you human, right? So I think if you are able to do that, you will eventually find whatever success means to different people, but you will eventually find success.
And I think the people, somebody who's listening to this right now might be in a situation where they never had that courage to have that difficult conversation with their business partner or life partner or whoever that person is, right? So tell us, how do you initiate the difficult conversations? If there is if you have thought about it consciously and of course, like maybe rehearsed in your head, like, hey, this is what I'm going to have conversation with either your business partner or your life partner, anyone. Like, how do you?
I think I've been accused of bottling up feelings, right? So I've had that more. For me, this journey has been more difficult than I think my co-founders. I think and it's a good thing. You see, like I said, definitely far from perfect, right? While I espouse or I'm saying this, I'm also on a journey, right? I think so I have many a times been told, you come late with your what's on your mind, right? Like if this is on your mind, you've thought about it, then you could have escalated it earlier. Why is it coming late, right? And I'm also on that self-analysis, right? Okay, why do I do it this way? Is it because, I don't want to upset someone, I don't want to hurt someone, right? And that's primarily where it comes from for me. It is ki yaar, okay, you don't want to rub someone of the wrong way. You don't
Yeah.
want to push a few buttons. But I think that does more harm than good in the long run,
Yeah.
right? So I'm on a journey to prevent myself from bottling up feelings and, raising the alarm sooner, right? My co-founders do this much better. It's very almost immediate for them. कुछ हुआ अब भी बता दो, do it well, have those conversations. So yeah, I think for me it takes that little bit of a process of think about it, rehearse it, do it. But I think that then leads to you're overthinking it, right? So I tend to overthink a little bit more, and that does lead to more fatigue of the mind, and it doesn't solve the problem at hand, right? So I think I've improved, and I hope to continue to improve on this journey of being able to turn around faster, on feedback, on calling things out, on being more clear, more transparent. Listen, this is how I feel. This is what I think. Have that conversation. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Arman. And it do require a sense of authenticity and vulnerability to be sort of on up where you stand in terms of that. So for the people who are listening to this, and if somebody feels that, hey, you know what, I'm not able to express it to the other person, where should we begin from your own journey, like, and the journey that you are still on? Do you have any thing that you want to share
I
with
think
them?
it's there's a saying called eat the frog, right? Do the hardest thing first. So I think it's obviously sometimes it's best to do it with tenderness, right? So schedule a time, make sure that everyone's prepared, more calm, and then do it, right? I think you'll always come out of it feeling better than worse. So I think just bite the bullet. Yeah, eat the frog. Just go ahead and do it.
And also, you said about vulnerability between the partners, right? And what has that journey been for you like? Because I think it had been an
6 years,
assumption from me, because you and Aswajit, you were college friends.
Correct.
So maybe it
yes.
has been a bit more easier.
So I think Ajay and Ashwajit know each other since school. Ashwajit
yeah.
and I know each other since day one of college. So we're definitely friends who run a business together. And I think there has to be a fine balance between work and friendship as well, right? Like we spend more time together than most people could imagine. All of our days, many evenings. And then you have to draw that balance between when are you chilling and having fun and when are you working. And I think, we're vulnerable with each other. We're honest with each other on our emotions, on our feelings. And we're not shy of, sharing our insecurities with each other as well. So I think that's kept us, strong together all these years. And of course, it's been a journey full of ups and downs, full of trials and errors, from highs and lows, right? So I think ultimately it boils down to, okay, are we going to be there for each other in the good times and bad? It's like वो शादी वाला vow जो होता है ना, sickness and in health, good and bad, and आपने वो vow बना ली है, then you try and live up to that, right? I'm not saying it's perfect, but are we trying our very best together? We are, and I think now the organization, the products that we've made, the customers that we have, the experience that our brand is creating, for consumers, it is, I feel, larger than our individual or collective motivations, right? So I think that's a good place to be in, right?
What is the one lesson that took longest for you to learn in business or in life?
I think I'm still learning this, and it's still a battle, right? We started Sleepyowl with the core agenda to कि यार ये गैप है, हमारे लाइफ में गैप है, तो हम इसको बिल्ड करेंगे, एंड देन और कंज्यूमर्स होंगे जो फील द सेम वे, एंड दैट अप्लाइड ट्रू फॉर अ लार्ज एक्सटेंट. But ultimately, it's a company that has to cater to a market, and you have to understand who the consumer is in the market that you're operating in, right? And build for that, build for them. So, I may say that, listen, personally, maybe or maybe kya it's true. My preference is to have uh, a sugar-free oat milk latte. Let's say that's the case, right? Can that be the hero product for my organization? Maybe not, because there is a very small subset of consumers that want that, right? So you have to have that balance between, okay, what do you want to build for yourself and then put it out as ki, the company selling this, versus what does the larger consumer want, right? Because ultimately, for you to survive the test of time, you have to build products that scale, right? So you have to understand कि यार market में larger customer को क्या चाहिए, right? I'm not saying that brands shouldn't cater to niches. We started with cold brew. We are working on a hot brew black coffee, which we're drinking right now. There is the, you know, there is a customer for this that is growing year on year on year on year. But it may take 20, 30, 40 years for this to become the, you know, the mainstay,
Yeah.
right, for consumers, right? So while on that journey, you have to have that balance of, what the larger population wants and what the niche wants, what will drive sales and what will drive brand awareness and innovation and visibility. So that balance, that seesaw, is really tough to do because we started out as a company that founders built for themselves, right? So I think that unlearning of कंज्यूमर बिहेवियर, कंज्यूमर साइकी, जैसे जो हमने कोल्ड ब्रू लॉन्च किया था, तो आई वुड से 90% लोगों को तो पता ही नहीं था व्हाट इज कोल्ड ब्रू. So education, time,
yeah.
energy, right? Today, while cold brew is growing year on year, it is the smallest contributor to my business, right? So that may surprise a lot of folks, but that is also the truth, right? Because we have launched things that are more, appealing to a larger subset of consumers, right? And that has taken front seat in terms of
revenue
and reach as well, right? But our main aim is still, while someone may start their journey with one of your more a larger reaching portfolio products, will they eventually discover and try the cold brew? Our hope is yes, right? And they'll realize that, okay, this is also delicious, this is also great, right? That's the hope. But that's a journey and that takes time, right?
Do you sometimes have this fear that if everything crumbles down and everything goes to ground as a founder, is that normal to have that fear?
It is, but you can't live in that fear. I mean, that fear feeling comes and goes, but I don't think you can live in that fear, because if you're living in that fear, then you're scared. You're not being bold, you're not taking risks. I think the whole reason why we're founders or entrepreneurs is because we have an appetite for risk, right? Otherwise, we shouldn't be doing what we're doing, very clearly. So if you don't have that risk-taking appetite, if you're not comfortable with fear, then don't do it. So yes, there are days and times where we're fearful, we get scared, but I think, you know how to live with that feeling. मतलब you're okay, ठीक है, मुश्किल है, हाँ है, uncertainty है, risk है, but then you have to let that, figure out how do you take that emotion and instead of letting it control you, you say I will control it. And that mindset shift एक बार हो जाता है, then you can say okay, ठीक है, we'll fight it and we'll try and come out of it stronger.
And when you have some of those feelings like come up, is there anything particularly that you do to like change your state, change the mindset?
Yeah, the three of us just talk to each other. We just get in a room, talk, spend time together, comfort each other.
Like vent it out, share it.
So yeah, that's why I said it's good that we're three. It's good that we are also the three friends, because then we have each other for that comfort, that we're in it together, right? So I think that really helps.
What is one of the wrong belief about yourself that you've held for the longest period of time, which you realized, oh, that was something that I shouldn't have held for so long?
Personal, you're asking on like a personal belief. I don't know. I'll have to think about this one. Yeah, I'll have to think about what it is that I feel like, So I think one of the, kabhi kabhi aisa, when you do something, right, like you feel like, okay, are you the right person to do it or not, right? Because you are exploring uncharted territory, right? So when you are exploring uncharted territory, right, I think you sometimes feel like, like, are you the right person to be doing this, right? But or can a professional come and do it, right? Like, when I was trying to scale supply chain and ops, I'm like, yeah, I'm not the right person for this. I can't do this. It's not my domain. But then you also look back and say, listen, you have done it now. आप ही ने तो बनाया है, right? So how do you sustain it, right? Or how do you further educate yourself or train yourself to the best of your capability? And if not, how do you seek help from those around you? So I think I had these moments of, self-doubt or capability concerns. Matlab, am I good enough to do it, right? But then you look around and say, no, you are the one who's done it not till now. So why are you doubting yourself? There's no reason to. So I think this mindset also, you have to shift every now and then and give yourself a pat on the back, right? Ki nahi, acha hai, you've done it, So I think appreciating yourself and giving yourself a thumbs up or a kudos on the occasion is good.
Yeah, it is. And
you can't be too self-critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like the first state which we are operating in, right? Where we are our biggest critic. And we feel that, like, for instance, I do have those moments when I feel like, am I even making any difference with this podcast? Is anyone even getting value out of it? And, I go on those cycles as well. And then somebody just leaves comment somewhere saying that, hey, you know what, I just listened to that conversation and, this is the best conversation, that it's just what I needed today. And that is like a validation that you get, oh my God, like, here I am doubting and going through this phase. And here is somebody who is at this moment listening to this and finding value, out of this. And I think the lesson for me and for someone who's listening to this is every single person, no matter what, no matter who, do have those thoughts and do have those questions on their head.
Absolutely.
Like, am I doing it right? Is my work making impact in someone's life? Am I the right person? Like you said, I think, but yet you don't stop. Yet you like you go and work on your product, you work with your team and stuff. Like, you don't stop like, hey, am I the right person to do this? And you don't sit at home and, not show up tomorrow at the office. With that feeling, you show up at the office tomorrow.
100%. And I'll tell you, like, while we were talking about self, but from a company standpoint, if there are ever, down moments, right? Like, we did a survey many months ago actually, where it, so during COVID, where I said, okay, what if Sleepyowl were to shut down tomorrow? What are customers' thoughts on that? 93% people responded that they'd be disappointed. So that lets you know that, you can't afford to close down. You can't afford to fail because there are people who depend on you and enjoy what you're doing and creating. So, those are times you say, okay, nahi, solve karna hai, figure out karna hai, and ho jayega.
Great. So I have last few questions, Arman. If we were to start this journey all over again, what are those 3 things that you would have done differently?
Okay. I would have, definitely started the same way that we did, because I think that circumstance you can't change. As freshly graduated young folks, with no one's going to believe you on the first day. You have to believe in yourself. So वो हम change नहीं कर सकते. It's impossible to change that, right? So therefore, our first product, which is the cold brew category, to enter the market with that, I think that was absolutely what would have happened. What I believe is that we should have, at that very time, sort of in the first 6 months itself, 100% reached out to a lot more people, or the right people, who have some experience in FMCG or F&B to get insights and advice from and get a better category understanding. I think that would have been one thing that I wish we had done on the day zero. Having said that, उसका एक negative outcome भी हो सकता है. अगर आप बहुत लोगों की सुनो, then हो सकता है हम यहाँ नहीं होते. Right? Everything has its own journey. Right? Second thing is, I think you need to, many a times, learning is that, sometimes when things are not working, pull the plug faster, right? Don't ये नहीं कि हाँ हो जाएगा, then it's too late, right? So there are many projects and many things where we did not pull the plug as soon as we should have pulled it, right? Third is, while we did it to some extent, always go deep before going wide, right? That's whether it's in your sales or whether it's in your learning, कि अगर आपको 2 या 3 नई चीज़ें सीखनी हैं तो आप पहले एक चीज़ पकड़ो और उसमें deep जाओ, then go wide, right? And this is something we're applying to ourselves now as well. So anything that we pick up on as people or as founders, we first go deep, then go wide. Can't go wide. You might think it's good, but it's not.
What inspires you to do everything that you do?
I think our genuinely, like, I think 2 things. One is I genuinely feel we are innovating. We are creating innovative products, exciting products, unique products, things that are and not just in other products, but in also how you bring it to people, right? So you can say, यार नहीं आपकी cold coffee तो unique नहीं है, but I can say नहीं, you can taste it and do a blind taste test and 99% confident I'll say we'll win because it's made that way. But other than the fact that it's a product, uski presentation or the way it comes to consumers is unique. It's exciting. It's different, right? So our way of communicating and marketing is very different. But I think the second thing is looking at our repeat consumer base and consumer love. I think that's definitely what really inspires me and keeps me going.
What is the one book that you'd like to recommend people listening to this?
Yeah, if it's one, then Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It's very, I think every other person who will come will also say the same thing. But if it's one, it's just that. Otherwise, I think there's always, I end up reading a lot of books on entrepreneurship, and that's what I thoroughly enjoy, right? Because you get to put yourself in the shoes of other people who've been on similar journeys, and always pick a leaf out of how they thought, their mindset, what they did. So yeah.
What keeps you grounded?
I think I think my family, definitely, whether it's my wife, her personality, her way of thinking, my parents. I think just the way I've been brought up, I think it keeps me grounded. I think one of the most important traits, and if people can keep it, is humility. It's
You picked that up from your parents?
Yes, more or less. Yeah, more or less. And I think even my wife, because I think she is with me because I don't usually have like this, excess pride, or it's good to be proud about what you're doing, but your pride or your ego shouldn't come in the way of, who you are and how you operate, right? So I think, the family keeps me grounded.
I have one last question.
Yes.
Imagine you are standing on a stadium, and this is the largest stadium that has ever been built in the history of the world. I know that you have fair interest in sports, but you are not in the middle of the ground, but you are on the stage of the stadium.
Okay.
And there are millions of people eagerly, passionately waiting to listen to you. And you have been given only 1 minute of the time to share the most important lesson that you have learned in your life. What would be your lesson?
Yeah, I think keep trying, never give up, right? That's the simple funda. Now, isko aap, there's so many ways to say it, right? And so many other anecdotes and quotes that have been shared and that I resonate with, right? Whether it's, entrepreneurship is like jumping off a mountain and building an airplane on the way down. Very true. And I resonate with it, right? क्योंकि आपको नहीं पता आप कैसे survive करोगे, आपको करना है, and that's a part of trying and hopefully not failing, right? And चलो आप fail भी हो गए, then you restart, right? Another part of this is get both your hands dirty, both your feet dirty, right? Like, I mean, you cannot expect कि आप काम नहीं करोगे और आपको result आएगा. You have to get dirty, and that again involves trying different things and failing and succeeding, right? Third is, go all in, right? That's another very simple mantra कि you have to go all in, put all your effort in. You can't be half and half out. वो फिर आपका, कहीं ना कहीं gap हो जाता है, right? So, but all of this in a nutshell is that, never give up trying, because you don't know what will click when it will click, right? So I think even we at Sleepyowl have tried, failed, experimented, and some things have clicked, some things haven't. And I think that's a part of the journey. As long as we put our heads down, stay humble, the outcomes will be there. Yeah.
Super. This has been great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so
Arman,
much.
And thank you so much for doing everything that you are doing. And when I got my hands on, I was telling you before we started recording, and this is not because you are sitting in front of me, which I genuinely feel is when I got my hands on the cold brew. I think it was during the lockdown, and I just saw one of your ads, and I saw that this looks like an interesting one. And when I went on to read more about like cold brew, and I realized that, hey, you know what? I think it's much better because it is less bitter,
it's less acidic.
Yeah, less acidic, and also I liked, I felt that coffee making in generally as a process is so much love that you put into it, and I felt that just when I was pouring the water on the pot and put it in the fridge, and just like the sheer love that you're putting in and let it brew. So not only coffee was brewing, but maybe the love was brewing.
100%. And it's a long labor of love because it's overnight brewing. So you have to have patience.
Yeah. And that, in fact, was the other lesson, that I was taking from it, because, we discussed about being impatient at the very, very beginning of this podcast. And I consider myself as like a very impatient person. And I took that as also one of the lesson on that is like, hey, you know what, this is a way for me to learn patience. And how I do have a dog, which is like 10x of the lesson that, on patience, I'm getting pretty much like masterclass on patience. But I think, that's where also I felt that, hey, this entire process of making it requires a lot of patience, and you can't, it's actually
the simplest process. Pani dalna hai, but then you have to
wait, right? And also if you think about it, and, like, I can order anything, like it comes to me in like 10 minutes now. And to also train your brain that something good to brew in your life, it takes time. And that was like a, metaphor that I was also using for myself. So, you might have just considered like this is a product, but for me, like, it's like quite a few lessons, and I'm being very honest about it. And that like really took that as a process. So thank you so much for doing everything, and it's been such a great having this conversation. Thank you for
having me, and I hope I'd like to end on the note that I for people listening to this, one LinkedIn message or WhatsApp message or email away, and I will do my best to respond and engage with anyone who is interested in engaging further.
Yeah, thank you
so much.
Awesome, super stuff.